Wilds of Eldraine is looking to be absolutely terrific, so what better way to get into it than build a deck around my favorite commander of the set? Alright, cool, so let's build a Hilda of the Icy Crown deck. In this video, I'm going to break down my Hilda of the Icy Crown EDH deck. I'll provide a full deck as well as some substitutions and then a bit of high-level strategy for the deck. If you're interested in high-quality EDH deck guides, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I have a bunch of these you can check out. Hilda of the Icy Crown is a card from the upcoming set Wilds of Eldraine that costs 2 generic, 1 white, and 1 blue mana for a 3/4 legendary human warlock creature. Whenever you tap an opponent's creature that's untapped, you may pay 1 mana. When you do, you can either make a 4/4 elemental token that's white and blue, or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or scry 2 and then draw a card. Hilda provides a commander for an effect that has been around for a while, that being the freeze mechanic, where you tap a creature and then they generally stay tapped for a turn. This has never been a really powerful effect, mostly because it says in the rules that tapped creatures get to untap like every turn. Except now with Hilda, you at least have something to show for all that tapping. The most important thing to note here is that Hilda only cares about tapping untapped creatures, so if you run into any creatureless decks, you're in trouble. Also, you can't double dip. Once a creature is tapped, you can't get another trigger by tapping it again. Now keep in mind that you can tap a creature before a player's turn, then right after their untap step. It's not optimal, but sometimes you have a lot of tap effects and you need triggers to advance your game plan. The cool thing here, pun very intended, is that tapping your opponent's creatures is just the mechanism to trigger one of Hilda's abilities. You could make a token deck with Hilda providing big 4/4s, or you could go for a go wide strategy in a counter deck and use Hilda to buff everything. As long as you have a good amount of tap effects, Hilda can support those existing archetypes. Now in this deck, I'm going to make the deck very open-ended and focus just on tapping, and then prioritizing Hilda's triggers as a win condition of themselves. This will truly be a commander deck where the deck is focused completely around the commander. These are cards that will tap opponent's creatures one time. The first group I like to call 2 for 2, and are all instants with 2 mana value that will tap at least up to 2 creatures. Downpour will actually tap up to 3, so that's good, and Lead Astray will get you just the 2 for 2. It's the worst of the bunch, but it's an old card, cut some slack. Study Break will get you a tap 2 with a loot, and Expose Evil will get you a tap 2 and an Investigate. Ardent Veil Tactician will get you a tap 2 and then a Flying Body, which is not exciting, but it is there. Feeling of Dread is a 2 for 2 with a flashback for the same cost. Next up are the Giga Taps, which can tap any number of creatures in a single instance. The Giga Taps start with Giga Drowse. It rates a bit better on mana investment than the others here, the rest being X spells, including Gridlock, which is a basic X, tap a spell. We also run Glimpse of the Sun God, which will get you a free scry, and Icy Blast, which will lock down all the creatures you tap with that spell if you have a creature of power 4 or greater. Hint hint, you make 4/4 tokens. We then run a few random single tap effects, including Dream's Grip and Nevious Wisps. Both can get a tap trigger for just 1 mana with some extra bonuses. Hithlian Knots will get you scry and a draw, and Merfolk Trickster can turn off something in addition to the tap. This section will consist of cards that provide continual and or persistent tapping. We start with 2 oldies but goodies in Icy Manipulator and Opposition. Icy Manipulator might be a bit bad in this deck that's built around tapping things. 5 mana total is a lot to get invested to get the ball rolling, but I want to give it the benefit of the doubt. Now Opposition costs 4 mana, so it might not be great as well, but I just can't shake the thought of getting an elemental from Hilda, then using that elemental to tap a creature with opposition, and then getting another token with Hilda, and then chaining that until I have like 12 million elementals. Next we have Gadwick the Wizened and Court Street Denizen, which will give you a tap for a blue spell and a white creature respectively. Citadel Siege is there primarily for the tapping you get, though the counters can also be relevant. Hammers of Moradin can get you a bunch of taps on your own turn. Dreamshackle Geist and Timid Youthful Geist will also get you taps on your turn at the start of combat on your turn, though they don't need to go into combat to get those effects. Ballynock Trapper and Master of Impediments both get you a tap for a tap, with the Ballynock Trapper untapping every white spell you cast. Scepter of Dominance is an Icy Manipulator in white, and Teferi Who Slows the Sunset can reset a land and an artifact for you while getting a tap on an opponent's creature. It's really good and it's a Planeswalker, so that helps with a couple of Delirium cards we have in this deck. Now speaking of Delirium, Topplegeist is here and you'll get at least a tap for a mana, with the potential upside of many more taps. Retreat to Coralheim will give you a tap on a landfall trigger or a scry if you really need it. Lost-in-Arc Captain will get you a tap at the start of your upkeep while making little 1/1 tokens. Now if you get enough of these 1/1 tokens, you can use Hilda's ability to put +1/+1 counters on everything and have another makeshift army. Tolarian Kraken works a lot like Opposition in my brain anyways. Get a draw effect with Hilda, use that to tap a creature, then use the tap to trigger the Kraken to draw another card with Hilda, yada yada yada, etc etc. An Exorius Guildmage is kind of slow and expensive. This is kind of my personal choice. I just love this card ever since it was released. The tapping effect is fine, but overcosted. Occasionally the second ability, or even the threat of the second ability, is more powerful than the tap itself. These cards all trigger in one way or another off taps, kind of like Hilda. Verity Circle and Betrayal will both get you extra draws off your taps. I don't know that I'll ever activate Verity Circle, but it's there just in case. Rhoda Geist Avenger can get super big, and Mondrak Glory Dominus will double up on any elemental tokens created from Hilda. First up we have Arcane Signet and Soul Ring. Gotcha! Thank you to everyone who liked my Frodo EDH video. It got me over 100 likes and that was really cool. True to my word, I will not be using Soul Ring or Arcane Signet for at least 1 year. The ramp in this deck is pretty interesting. We have standard stuff like Azorius Signet, Felwar Stone, Mind Stone, and Smothering Tithe. We also run Talisman of Progress and both Sky and Marble Diamond, and Everflowing Chalice. Then things get really spicy with Sten Paranoid Partisan, which acts kind of like a medallion but for card types instead of colors, and Scheming Fence, which is basically just a way to steal your opponent's Soul Ring or Arcane Signet in case you made a deal with the internet to not play with those cards. I start the hand sculpting with Fact or Fiction, which continues to be one of my favorite cards in all of Magic. I'm leaning towards just running it in every deck that I possibly can. We also run Enlightened Tutor and Moonblessed Cleric. We have a lot of powerful enchantments in this deck, and you don't want to get bogged down with tap effects, so you need to be drawing lots of cards. Cards like Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study. Just great card draw. I finish out the hand sculpting with Land Tax and Theft of Dreams. I really like Land Tax here since Hilda triggers require a surcharge of 1 mana each tap, so you want to be getting as many land drops as possible. You can play Land Tax turn 1, but don't worry about getting the effect right away. This is something you can get 1 land here, 2 lands there, or skip a turn just to make sure you're hitting all your land drops. Theft of Dreams is really more here for thematic reasons. It's a tap deck, and this draws based on the number of opponents' tapped creatures. I'm not sure how good this is, but I can imagine you can always at least use this as a divination. Our interaction is a little slight. Our interaction consists of 2 counters, 2 removal, and 2 protection. Cryptic Command and Rewind are my choice of counterspells. Cryptic can get you a free mass tap in addition to the counterspell, and Rewind leaves you with some mana to activate Hilda after your counterspell. Generous Gift is just all-around good removal, and we pair that with the new Generous Gift, Stroke of Midnight. It's a little bit toned down, but it does the job. Our protection is pretty specific, Teferi's Protection and Clever Concealment. You could run something that gives your creatures indestructibility or something, like Unbreakable Formation, but I like the protection phasing gives you, especially with your elemental tokens. Remember, phasing out tokens doesn't destroy them like blinking would. We run 5 wipes, which is maybe 1 more than I would normally run here, but these particular wipes generally synergize with Hilda. Damning Verdict is really great for you since you can use a tap trigger to put a counter on all your creatures, then drop Damning Verdict with all your creatures being immune to it. Similarly, Hour of Reckoning can be used to destroy everything on the board but your elementals. Illithid Harvester and Sunblast Angel will both destroy tapped creatures in their own kind of way, one by destroying them and the other one by turning them into morphed creatures. Fell the Mighty is on the edge here, it's just something I'm currently trying out. I could easily see this being replaced with something ironclad like Supreme Verdict, or something more versatile like Farewell. I couldn't find any utility lands that really work with the game plan we're trying to do, so I don't think I'm going to be running any. Feel free to add your favorite generic utility lands. I run 10 lands that can produce Azorius. Nothing fancy or special, just run what you have, as long as it doesn't come into play tapped. We're going to need extra mana to activate Hilda, so you want to make sure all your mana is available to use as soon as possible. We round out the deck with 12 islands and 14 plains. Early in the game, you want to get a few multi-tappers out and going. Try to get Hilda out when you can be assured of getting a couple triggers in. Nothing will feel worse than ramping into a Hilda and having it removed before you get any benefit. Mid-game, you'll want to aim towards building an elemental army. Again, we built this deck with Hilda in mind as the sole threat, so look towards getting Teferi's Protection or Clever Concealment in the turns leading up to a lethal attack when your board starts looking more and more threatening. In-game, you'll want to keep the elemental pressure on, and +1/+1 counters can accelerate that. Also keep in mind that you can trigger Hilda during combat. So if you have a big attack, you can use an instant speed tapping effect to put +1/+1 counters on your creatures, getting a potential surprise kill. Now there are a few weaknesses with the deck. It doesn't have a lot of targeted removal, so pillow forts may cause a problem. You can always swap out the interaction spells or even remove a few tapping effects and replace them with more interaction. You may also run into decks that don't have many creatures. If you find a lot of that, you can always run things like Rasputin the Neuromancer or a land like Forbidden Orchard to give your opponent stuff to tap. You may also want to watch out when you're one of the last two players. As players diminish, so do tap targets. One thing to consider is that if someone is about to be eliminated, will you have enough targets continually to use Hilda? Maybe keep someone alive for a bit longer if you can control them and get more advantage from your Hilda. And that's my Hilda deck. I do really think that Hilda is one of the best commanders in a long time, with the added bonus that it's in my favorite color pairing. I think it might be my Azorius deck of choice going forward, replacing the Afara control deck that I did a video on here. If you like this style of video, feel free to subscribe or watch another video that YouTube will suggest. I guarantee you that it is definitely a video that you can watch. Thank you for watching ElementHobbies, and I will see you around.